Chapter 655 Horrors and Wonders Part 1. To stop the two professors from bickering, Floria gave the order to enter the second building at once. Helion and Jirth, her two best soldiers who she had assigned to the second group, yelped in surprise at the vision appearing in front of their eyes. Gaku and Nishal quickly joined them, unable to hold their curiosity. Almost at the same time, Floria stepped through the door of the first building, happy that she hadn't let Kyla join them. She was looking at a huge antechamber, very similar to one of those at the entrance of a military base. On her left, there was a regular-sized desk and a chair, testimony how the ODI couldn't be much bigger than humans. On her right, a series of chairs were lined up against the wall. Judging from the size of the room and the number of seats, the base had to receive frequent visits from the ODI's upper echelons. There was no other reason she could think of to justify the presence of all the transparent tanks lined up in front of the chairs. Each tank held the remains of a member of a different race. Floria identified a human, a Rai, a Dryad, and an Orc. The other two were members of races unknown to her. Their bodies had been dismembered and submerged in an unknown transparent liquid that seemed to have preserved them. Bubbles of some kind of gas were pumped from below and then sucked from the upper part of the tank in a continuous loop. At the base of each tank, there was a pedestal with a holographic display. Words and images appeared at fixed intervals, reminding Lith of an interactive museum. What kind of monster could do such a thing? Floria pointed at the body parts. Their flesh had been divided into regular chunks, but somehow the blood vessels connecting them were intact and the hearts were still beating, giving the creatures a semblance of life. Humans, for example, Yandra replied. Why do you think the definition of forbidden magic is so lax? Even healing magic can be considered forbidden if you use it to experiment on others instead of treating them. Before allowing anyone to touch anything, the professors scanned the room for arrays and any kind of magical traps while Lith did the same with life vision. The place is safe, Professor Elkes said. Let's see what's written here. He stood in front of the tank holding a human male, around 20 years of age. It's mostly technical jargon that I don't recognize, but from what I can understand it's an explanation of how the life force of humans works. Elkes could browse through the different pages at will thanks to what looked like a touchscreen. After tinkering a bit with the commands, she became pale as a ghost. Good gods, these are no explanations. Once you get past the introduction, there are daily reports up to this date. The tanks are constantly monitoring their condition and somehow they keep these poor creatures alive. Lith already knew it. Life vision had shown him that the prisoners' life forces were tangled and twisted, almost on the verge of collapsing. Yet they had life forces nonetheless. Most of the heads were split into multiple pieces, making it hard for normal people to notice that their eyes were following the newcomers from the moment they had entered the room. Lith could read them like an open book. All they were filled with was pain and hope. Each time one of the air bubbles popped up after reaching the surface, Lith could hear faint screams of agony vibrating through the glass-like tanks. The choir of voices he was able to discern thanks to his enhanced hearing made him want to puke. The fragmented beings had long lost themselves into madness, yet Lith could have sworn to recognize some words among the gurgling sounds they emitted. Scan everything with your army amulets and let's destroy this horror, Floria said, activating the encrypted mode on her amulet and forcing it onto all the amulets belonging to someone of inferior rank. The data would be stored but remain inaccessible even to the amulet's owner, to prevent dangerous knowledge from falling in the wrong hands. Lith wasn't new to pain and torture, but such a cruel exhibition was unthinkable of even for him. The ODI had clearly perfected their life force manipulation techniques to an extreme level to dismember different races like that and keep them alive for so long. They had achieved their purpose and yet the ODI had kept their victims on display, like an animal's head hung on a wall. That wasn't science anymore, just an empty abuse of power, like a kid plucking a butterfly's wings. Captain Ernest, forgive me, but I think we shouldn't destroy this place, Yandra said with a pained voice. What do you mean? What good could possibly come out of this? Floria was tempted to threaten the old professor with a charge of insubordination, but Floria could feel her emotions clouding her own judgment. These pods can preserve life. If we had something like them, maybe Khalil and the others would still be alive, just in suspended animation. Those words reminded Floria of Uriel's death, cracking her self-righteousness. Lith, what do you think? Asking him to be her moral compass sounded crazy even to Floria's ears, but she had no other options. Normally I would agree with Professor Yandra. These creatures, Lith refused to refer to them as people. What was left of them could be barely described as meat puppets. Don't seem to age nor bleed despite their terrible condition, which is good. Yet if it was up to me, I would destroy everything. First, this is not suspended animation. Their eyes still move and if you listen carefully you can hear their screams, which makes the pods just a torturing device. Yandra put an ear against the glass-like material, flinching back in horror less than a second later. Second, I doubt the ODI's motives. Whatever they have done to them, is likely to be some kind of weaponization system. This is a military compound, after all. Just like for the arrays on the door, I don't trust my back to the unknown. Lith couldn't share with them the fact that Solis had seen with Mana Sense something embedded inside the prisoners' brains. Something with an energy signature similar to the corrupted spores. No sense in using slave items on meat puppets unless they are meat soldiers. Lith thought while placing his hand on a tank and activating scanner. Somehow the liquid was able to transmit his mana, allowing him to study the condition of the trapped human. Just as I feared, these things had their life force maimed in a way that allows them to live at a terrible cost. This is no immortality. Their life force has simply been compressed to the point of stopping its flow entirely, making them neither dead nor alive. Such condition eternally keeps them on the brink of death, like a twisted version of Schrödinger's cat. Lith thought. It's worse than that, Solus said. All of these people have lost their mana core. The mana flow you perceive comes from their flesh. I think you were right about the weaponization. I believe this is the Odie's failed attempt to transform the other races into Balors. 2025. 1. Supreme Magus. Chapter 656 Horrors and Wonders Part 2. Meanwhile Lith and the others were taking through scans of the tanks. Marak could now understand what could have possibly made two elite soldiers yelp like little kids. The second building had an antechamber similar to the one in the first building, but filled with wonders instead of horrors. In front of the chairs reserved for the visiting guests, there were several weapons racks, each one filled to the brim with weapons crafted from the finest materials. I call dibs on adamant stuff, Marak said while darting towards the shiny mass of sharp metals. Professor Gaku snapped her fingers, hitting him with the wind blow equivalent of a punch to the stomach. We have yet to scan the room for danger, you fool. Also, what makes you think we can use any of those weapons? I doubt the ODI would let them be imprinted by a member of the lesser races. It's more likely that you'll trigger some trap. At those words, Marak snapped out of his greed fit, finally noticing that there was nothing to prevent intruders from seizing one or more of the weapons. If back in the day slaves cleaned this place, leaving an arsenal within easy reach would have been beyond idiotic. He thought. Despite the epiphany, his greed and self-preservation instinct were battling to the death. Some weapons were made out of metals he had never seen before, while others had intriguing shapes. They seemed to be made by two rectangularly shaped blocks of metal, joined to form a 90-degree angle with some kind of small lever in between. The longer block had a sight on its top and a cylindrical hole bigger than Marak's thumb right in the middle. All of them had a magical aura so strong that it made the hair on his body stand up. When the array-revealing spell was complete, the whole place lit up like a Christmas tree, especially the weapon racks. Ingenious, Professor Nishal said, admiring once again the Odie's craftiness. The mana crystals imbued in the weapons have been arranged to form an array that is probably meant to preserve and protect them from hands that are quicker than the brain of their owner. There's no telling what would have happened if you triggered it. Yeah, okay, lesson learned, my bad and all that stuff. Let's get down to the important part. Can you break the array? Is any of those weapons good? Marak asked. Professor Gaku would have liked to give him a snarky remark, but the ranger wasn't completely wrong with his observations. Even in all her years as a forge master, she had never perceived such a powerful magical aura. All more the reason to be extra cautious. She was unable to identify most of the metals nor the design of what Lith would have instantly recognized as guns. To make matters worse, despite them being spotless, the weapons had a peculiar smell. Something Gaku was certain to know but she couldn't put her finger on. I can but I won't, Professor Nishal replied. I had no time to make sure they are not linked to some kind of alarm. There are too many rays here, so it's better to add one more formation rather than removing one. He placed the mana crystals she had taken from the door at the four corners of the room and another one at its center, chanting a powerful spell that enveloped the room in a purple light. There. If anything happens, the barrier I placed on top of the Odie's arrays should give us plenty of time to get to safety. I also arranged it so that it will slow down the activation of the other arrays. I'm done underestimating the enemy, Nishal said. Gaku used that time to decipher the holographic display in front of each weapon rack. Unlike Elka's, she could read even the technical jargon, giving her a much clearer understanding of the ODI research. She had reached her position despite her relatively young age thanks to her perfect memory that allowed her to learn anything after just a couple of readings. Gods, I doubt the kingdom will give any of these weapons as a reward, and even if it did, I would turn down the offer. Here it says that they tried to compensate the metal's lack of a strong mana by fusing them with living beings. The weapons you can see here are all worse than cursed items. Not only were they made by using sacrifices, but also living flesh has been merged with their metal. Now I finally recognize the subtle smell of decay that fills this room. Gaku explained. That's gross, Marak blurted out. Well, it gets worse. Gaku kept reading. The weapons have been left in the open because they are a failed experiment. Instead of acquiring a mana flow and a life force like the ODI wanted, each one of these cursed objects is a bottomless pit of hunger. Even with the stasis array protecting them, here says that they failed to both find a way to prevent the biological part of the weapons from rotting and their owners from being sucked dry of their life force after imprinting them. I take my dibs back. Can we enter the next room now? I really hope to find something that the ODI didn't screw up with or that will not kill me on contact. Maybe even both, Marak said. Nishal and Gaku performed a series of spells on the closed door in front of them. This is odd, Nishal said. I have got only good news. The door is open and is not connected to the arrays in the room. Let me double check, yet she obtained the same results. Gaku shrugged, turning the handle and stepping inside the next room. In front of them, there was a long metal corridor with many doors along its sides. The walls were made of a transparent glass-like substance, so they only needed to check the corridor for traps before being able to move freely. Each room was both a forge mastering lab and a blacksmith workshop. Despite the passing of time, both the corridor and the labs were in pristine condition. The furnaces looked like they were brand new and the forges were made of pure silver. I don't get it, Marak said. What good are furnaces for a forge master and why silver? From perfectionists like the ODI, I would expect at least orichalcum, if not adamant. I'm afraid I know the answer, Nishal said. Those furnaces are big enough to fit a human body. I think they conducted their experiments on fusing flesh and metals here. As for the silver, after seeing their failure rate, would you give an ODI orichalcum? Definitely not, Marak replied. The group ignored the labs since they contained just the basic instruments for forge mastering. There was no trace of blueprints nor ingredients. At the end of the corridor, they found 2 doors, each one with a different tag. This one is the main office, Gaku explained with a big grin on her face. It might contain blueprints, but honestly I doubt it. I worked in an academy long enough to know that no project would be left in the hands of bureaucrats. This is likely to be where forge masters handed over their reports and requests for materials. Then why are you so happy? Nishal asked. Because the other one says, Armory.